Well, welcome to Watercolor Studio 42, and today I'm going to do like an exercise type thing. I don't know if you could consider it probably suitable for framing, if you will, but I've taped my paper with watercolor paper with regular masking tape, and I've broke it up into six squares. And you can do all sorts of things. You can turn it around if you want to work, vertically or horizontally. You don't have to put the tape on so it forms squares. You can just, you irregularly do diagonals and so forth. And as far as these little boxes, these little windows, these squares, you could probably put anything that you'd like in the window, or looking out of, let's say, if you were looking out of a window, what you would see outside, flowers, trees, and cars going by, or your neighbor's, fence next door, or whatever it might be, a clothesline, or you name it. But this is sort of like an exercise. Now, I'm taking a little bit of a risk today. Sometimes I sketch a little bit with a pencil, number 2 pencil. I usually sketch it out a little bit, and but today I'm just going to start right in, and I'm going to use probably, I guess I'll use the primary colors, the yellow, the red, blue, and whatever else we might mix in between, maybe some greens and orange and whatnot, purple possibly. But anyways, what I'm going to be doing is starting off, and I usually start with the lightest color on the palette. It happens to be yellow in this case. And what I'm going to do in each one of those squares that I have 6 today. But every one of them is going to get some of the color. In other words, if I start with yellow, I'll put a dot or a patch or a line of a brush stroke of yellow in each one of these areas, so that they're all going to be kind of given pretty much the same colors, if you will. So when I pull the tape off, you'll see that I've kind of made a uniform design. Now, of course, the tape on the paper is going to protect the white of the paper, so you're going to get a sort of a white frame. Now, when you break something up into squares or anything, like a floor pattern, ceiling patterns or whatever, they call it a grid, G-R-I-D, a grid. And so this is what we're going to do. This is an exercise, but if it looks pretty good, put a frame on it, and you can sell it. As far as the subject goes, my gosh, you could do anything. You could do each one of these areas could be a flower, a different flower, or birds, different type of bird, fish, you name it. Any subject that you want to deal with. If you want to just deal on one subject, like everything, all flowers or birds or fish or whatever it could be, that's okay. Or you can do something different in each one of those areas, and put a house, a car, a tree, and so forth, whatever. But it is free, and the idea is to just kind of get you to loosen up a little bit. You don't have to worry about being fussy with the pencil drawing, because I'm starting off with just wetting I dampen the squares that I have here, and with just water, and just to loosen up the fiber of the paper. So now, let's see, I have to pick a brush. I'm going to take a relatively smaller brush, not so much of a flat brush. A lot of times, if it's a large area to cover, I use just probably a 1 inch or 3/4 inch flat brush. But today, I'm just going to use a little bit of a larger brush. It's this one happens to be number 14. Okay. Well, anyways, now, so I'm going to start right in, And just at random, I'm just going to start with yellow and give each one of those areas something. So I could start off this way. This one here could go that way. Let's do something a little bit bumpy here. How's that? I suppose you could put numbers in there if you wanted to. It looks like I have it. Anyways, there's a 1 and a 3. A little bit of a backwards 3, but nevertheless. Now, let's see. Let's continue on here. These two look the same, so I got to kind of do something else with this one. Okay, just to make it a little bit different. We'll start through the middle here with this one, vertical up and down. I got a diagonal up there, and let's see. Let's make something loop across here like that. Okay, so now I've started off using yellow. Now I can use yellow again, maybe a dot. Let's put a little dot here, dot there, just at random. Dot, 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 dot. So what you're doing is distribution of color. Okay, now we'll just wipe the brush off here a little bit, and then dip it into the water. We'll do a different color. You can use red. We'll start off with red next, and see what we can do with that. Now, it's okay if the red goes into the yellow while the yellow's still there. There's some red there, a little red there. I'm not really thinking too much about what I'm doing. A lot of people say I probably don't do that all the time anyway. So anyway, here we go. All right. How's this? Wow, look at this. All right, let's go over here. It's kind of a dry brush effect. That I want to moisten it a little bit more. Dot here. How about something in there like that? All right. So now I've distributed my red. 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's give it another, maybe something in there. I got 2 there, 2, 2, 2, something up in here. Okay, something over here. Now, I can turn this around. Look at it differently, from another view, something like that. Now, sometimes these things might accidentally, by the way, really accidentally look like something. Maybe not to me or to you or whatever, but nevertheless, it might be a little bit different. If you turn this around, you can always see a face somewhere. See the 2 dots in the mouth here? I'm not sure of some of these other shapes, okay? But let's see, red everywhere, twice, yeah, okay. All right, and I'm just gonna clean some of that paint off. And I'm gonna just go over here and try some blue. We'll try some blue. This is sort of a deeper blue, probably I guess it's ultramarine blue. So now blue, right? Let's try some blue right here. My brush still had a little bit of red on it, so it's a little bit purple. Let me clean that up a bit. Purple's fine, but I don't know if I'm ready to use it just yet. Well, here we go. Maybe that's better. That's a better blue, I guess. Let's put something in here. Now, I'm just doing this at random, because if I start thinking too much about this, I might make it into something, maybe some sort of an object. And let's say if I make it look like a person, I might want to find faces in the other 5 square shapes, okay? Maybe. We'll see what we got here. Put something there, blue. Right in here, blue. Maybe a dot there. Something down here. Okay. Oops. Need something, another blue. Oh, how's that? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, I guess we got blues twice everywhere. Okay. This one's a little bit, a little bit of red in it there. All right, now I can go back and I could start working with the colors I have here, or I can introduce another shade. We'll see what we have on the palette. I think this one's sort of a darker color. The one in the middle here is supposed to be Payne's Gray. Let's see how dark it is. Payne's Gray. Okay. Put some there. One there. One up here. A little bit there. Something here. Okay. Now that's doing that Payne's Gray once. Let's come back and use that color again. Let's put something there. I'm thinking too much about where to put shapes. I probably shouldn't be doing that. Not worrying about where it's going. Okay. Let's see. What else we got to do here? All right. Something in here. I'm getting tight on space here. Okay. And, wow, I've used up this space quite a bit. Okay, now I think I've got, wait a minute. Yeah, I guess I've got that particular shade in there. And, two. Maybe add something more into that one. Okay, now, wow, this looks like fun, huh? I'm going to clean the brush off. Now, some of the colors that I do have, I'm going to drop some water, some little spots on there, see what happens. 2, 3, okay. Let's hit this one. Just drop some spots on there. Now there's a little bit of paint still in the brush. It's sort of a pale gray. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Okay. 1, 2. Whoops. I think I need a little bit more water there. Okay. I'm using my dirty water, not my clean water. All right. Now, let's come back, and maybe I need something to tap on. Let's tap a little bit. Let's put some sprinkle in there. How's that? Put some salt on it. Something like that, I guess. Okay. So, see, when you do things like this, you don't know what's going to happen. Now, hopefully it looks halfway decent when we get done, but there's no actual guarantee when you do something like this. There's no real guarantee. Oops, I need more specks than that. Let's get some more water here. Drop some water in there. Some more spatter over here. At random. Okay. All right. Now, if I feel as if I want to add a few more drops where I have an empty spot, that's okay. See how it runs and so forth, and here's the blue going into yellow to make green. That's going to happen. You might get some red going into the yellow to make orange. Okay, that type of thing. It looks like it's a little bit empty in there. Let's drop some more paint in there. I'm going to add some more paint on the brush so it's a little darker. All right, here we go. Now this is sort of interesting. Certain areas where the paint spreads and blends in, and like the yellows mixed with the green, I'm just going to leave that, okay? This is happening a lot when you drop something into the yellow. It's going to change a little bit. Now, this next time, I'm coming back, and I'm going to take, in certain areas, I'm just going to pull some of that color out, and it's going to go to the edge, okay? I'm just going to pull it. It's probably going to soften an edge somewhere. It's bound to soften an edge. Now let's do all the same color so that we don't have to keep cleaning the brush off every time we move around here. Okay, I've done that. Let's do this one a little bit. That's a puddle there. How do we get rid of the puddle? Why don't we take that puddle and just pull it to the edge? Pull it right off to the tape. All right, over here. Pull this one in more. Now, you can, if a color is wet, you can take the color that you have, and you can purposely pull it in there, like blue into yellow. You got the green a little bit. You can do more of that over here, maybe. Now, sometimes the paint itself is going to kind of dry. Might dry up, so you might have to reactivate it. Now, let's try some of that with the some of the red. Okay, let's do this. Let's pull some of the red out. And purposely pull the red so it hits some yellow. How's that? And it can go right to the edge of the tape. That's fine. Okay, let's do some more over here on this one. Let's pull this one out. Pull some of that red out to the edge. Okay. How about right into the corner? How's that? Kind of interesting. It's starting to get a little bit of activated with the yellow mixing with the red. We're getting orange. So let's pull some of this blue out. Now the brush itself may have some color on it, okay? It may have some color. So here we go. These things are always kind of interesting to work on. And you really don't know what's going to happen in a way. You're kind of letting the paint kind of decide a few things for you. I'm jumping around here, but I'm primarily looking for where I can do something with the red. You can pull that right to the edge, up in there. How about down here? Let's take a little bit of water here, pull this one down. There you go. You can even change the contour, take some of the dots out if you want. And you can erase some of that if you want that edge to go a little further over into this area. Eventually, I think that I'm going to have to probably push the color all the way to the edge, so that when I pull the tape off, you're going to see a nice little patch there. Maybe I got 6 multi-miniature abstract paintings going here. Who knows? Let's see what happens here. Let's take some of this, wiggle it out. It's turning a little bit purple right through there. Let's see what I want to do with that. I think I want to introduce a little bit more yellow back into here. See, automatically you're starting to add to this, and if it might not be the same for each area, but in the original distribution we did use each one got the same amount of color. So I'm just taking this idea, and where I think I might need some color, especially something going toward the edge, that's what we're doing now. So now we're starting to think about it. I'm not thinking of this as becoming an interesting subject. I like what's going on in there. This could be, has a lot of potential. When you do abstract painting, it may not be relative to any particular subject, but you're still dealing with shapes and color and texture and so forth when you do an abstract painting. In other words, you have all the ingredients. The only thing is that you may not have any particular subject that you can say, oh, that's a car, that's a truck, that's a tree, whatever type of thing. Let's do some pulling here. Let's take some of this red down here, go to the edge. I like what's happening there a little bit. Again, I'm just going to put some more yellow in there. See, now I'm thinking about, I'm still dealing with distribution of color. Okay, I'm going to pull this into here. You take a little bit of red, drop it into the bluish area, you get a little bit of purple coming out in between, or pinkish purple. So let's put that right to the edge. So when you pull the tape, you see a nice square shape. Okay, let's take some more of that neutral color. I think it's supposed to be Payne's gray, and I'm just going to close in some of the edges. I'm just going to put some paint along the edge of the tape and lock it in. Sort of lock in the corner, bring that across, kind of pull it into the, whatever the other color is there, blue. See, that kind of locks everything in. Now I got to do something with these corners. You can't really leave it like white, because then when you pull the tape off, you lose that edge. Maybe that's not a bad idea either. Maybe you don't need to see this thing as like a square. It can be just like a irregular patch or something. Okay, we'll fill that in, fill in this corner. See, now you're starting to think a little bit, but I'm personally not thinking of it yet to be any particular subject. I'm just kind of touching up the edges here, filling in the edge. But to me, that's not really any particular subject. None of these sort of make too much sense in a way. Okay, you're just going to pull this in, take some of that color out of here. That can go over to the corner. Okay, there we go here. All right. Now, maybe some of these things I could possibly, if I thought about it much or looked at it enough, I could probably start seeing things in there, you know, like especially fish. I see some fish floating around in there. Let's bring this out to the edge here. Close in the edge there. Fill this in. You can go into the other colors too and pull them out. Let them spread out. Use your imagination a little bit to see what's. You could save some of the white if the white looks like an interesting shape. I just leave it. Just let it stay there, you know, whatever. You might want to change it a little bit later, but right now, just let it stay there. Okay. This is sort of fun. You're kind of dancing around in here and having some of the colors kind of run in or bump up against each other, which is okay. It gets a little bit too muddy one way or the other. You might want to clarify it a little bit more. Muddy, somebody explained what mud is one time. They said, when you look at a picture and you can't define it as being a warm color, like orange, yellow, red, or whatever, or a cool color, you know, your greens and purples and blue, then you have to do something to make it either warm or cool. And then it's not considered a muddy color anymore. So that's something to think about. I don't think I've thought too much about that, but I've never run into a situation where I've had to resort to do anything. Now, if I see a lot of white on the edges, I just make sure it goes to the tape. Okay, here we go. You can see this whole thing evolving somewhat, and it may not look like anything in particular. It's just a design of colors, and they all have something in common because each one of the squares has been given the pretty much the same colors that we've used, the yellow and red and blue, and a little bit of the neutral color. I don't know how that's going to manage. So we'll see what happens there. What I'm doing now is just kind of making sure the edges are filled in like that. This was pretty well all done for the most part. You'd think that one might be. Now sometimes what I do is I just take and drop some more water. Just drop some more drops of water in there and kind of break up the white area. It might help. You can tap the brush on there if you want, like we did a week or two ago. We did some pointillism, just little drops of paint. See what else we have. My colors are getting sort of neutralized here. They're getting all muddy and grays and so forth. I don't know how that's going to look. Let's finish the top off here. Make sure everything's done on the edges to the tape. See how that works? That looks a little bit cloudy there. And I'm going to show you a little bit what I do sometimes with the white. I use they do have a watercolor white. They call it Chinese white, but it's not quite as opaque, and it's a little bit on the weak side. It's kind of transparent. Now I've been working on a little bit much here, but I've neglected some of this shape here. And go to the edge there, just whatever's on the brush, just pull it around. Okay. Now something like this, you really get into kind of an abstract frame of mind, if you will. You don't have to think about it too much. You're just filling in around the edges. And hopefully it's going to dry out okay. It might be okay. There you go. You can pull into that, pull some of the color out if you want. Leave some specks or spots. See, this side's got to be kind of doctored up there a little bit more. You can see this can be a lot of fun. And if you're dealing with a subject, like if you started off, well, these are going to be flowers, you would probably treat it a little bit more cautious, but you don't have to. You can kind of go kind of wild with it a little bit and kind of invent a flower that might be on Mars, but not on our planet. I don't know what there is. And I've covered up a lot of my specks there. I might have to put some specks back a little bit later. You can do the specks also with a marker. You know, you can take but you just have to make sure the color that you're putting the specks on is dry. That's kind of smudge a bit. I like that idea of it. Let's see what we got here. Take some. Get some of that paint out of the brush there. Go right into the corner. Touch up the corners. There you go. Okay, this looks a little bit smudgy. We might have to come back and drop some stronger color into that. Let's finish this off on the edge. This looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Oops, didn't finish this one off too good. Got that. So you get to a point where you could probably say, okay, this looks all right. I don't know, but what you can't do something else. You can take a wet area, for example, and I just happen to have some of my my cut up pieces of plastic, and I suppose you could texture. Let's say if I wanted to put like a thin line or something through here, I could probably emboss that. Or if the paint's still wet, you can push the paint around. See, you can push the paint around and do something else with it. See that? Do something with it. And people will look at it and say, how'd you get that effect? How'd you make it do that? Oh, use a credit card, I guess. That's okay. So, all right. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know what I want to do with that. Nope. When it dries up, you can't push the paint around too much. Okay. Now I'm looking at the contours of what I've done. Do I have enough sharp edges? Let's see if I can put something else through there like that. I had a strong line there, so I just wanted to break it up a little bit with something else in there. So you can use the edge, the point of the credit card, or if the paint is still wet, you can just slide it and push it around through there. Let's see what else. Now, I've got a puddle over here, right on the tape. So that's going to take forever to dry. So what I do is just lift that out of there, use the brush like a sponge, and pick some of that off. And that will dry faster. Now, if I want, I can come back and make sure I've got the corners finished off. Take some of, if it's got too much in there, take that down. Now this is going to be very faint, very soft in there. Some of these colors are going to jump out. Now, overnight, if you let this set, the whole thing is going to lighten up a bit. Now, if I want to add anything, I can let this dry, and I can go back in and stipple it I can put a few more little dots in there. Take one of these other brushes, maybe that would work better. I'm not sure. You can use a thin brush. If I can pick it up, here you go. You can use like a brush like this. This is thin, like a rigger or a line brush. And if an area is dry enough, you can actually take some of your color. I'm going to take some of this darker color. And let's say if I wanted to do something in here, I could put lines back in. So I don't know if I want to do too much of that, but you can do a little bit of that. Kind of gives it a little bit more direction, you know, follow the lines in little short lines or thin lines. Break this up through here. Things like that. You can do that. Once you start doing this with some of those thin lines, then you're kind of giving it a little bit more energy to kind of move around a little bit. Let's do something in here like that. Oops. I didn't quite get enough paint on the brush or water on it. I was trying to get that to do that. But yeah, you can do some of that if you want. Now, if it gets to be a little bit much, you can also just re-wet the paper and just erase a lot of that in there. Let's say if you've got a heavy area, you could take a brush, take any old brush, I guess, and make sure it doesn't have anything on it. Pinch it out a little bit. And you can take that brush, wiggle it around, and you can actually lift some of the paint out. You can lighten up an area. I don't know if there's anything right now. We'll lighten up here. I'm looking at what I could do to have something coming in from the outside, okay? So in that respect, I'm going to go back to my thin brush. I guess it looks like a rigger or a liner, thin brush. And let's see where I can come in. Let's do that. A little bit here. Okay. This probably could use a little bit of perking up. Sometimes you can redo an edge somewhere, you know, kind of bring out a little bit of a shape. I want to see a banana shape there. I think I'm thinking of what I had for breakfast, I guess. Okay. See how you can do some things with the brush? All right, add something into that. So anyways, it's a matter of letting some of these areas dry, because you can keep going back and wet and the wet and the wet and the wet. Well, all you're doing is mixing color on the paper, and sometimes you don't end up with a stronger reds or a stronger yellow or blue. So sometimes what you have to do is you come back in, and you can take another brush. Hopefully they're all clean. I guess they're all right. And let's say if I wanted to introduce somewhere a little bit more blue, I could take this color here and oops, let's take something to tap on. How about handle here? You could tap some more speckles. You can put some of that speckle back in. Something like that. And I don't tamper with it. I just leave it alone. And because what happens if I start tampering with that too much, then it's just going to mix. It's going to mix in. Let's do something else with this. Maybe get a few textures back there. We got to make these things look like they're all relative to each other. Have something in common. Okay. Yeah. Now, this is up to you. You can turn this around. You can turn this around and look at it differently. Sometimes some people, if there's a lot of water there, they just tap it and they let the color run, gravitate, which is fine. You can do that. Move it around. Okay, you see how that works? And there are other different effects that you can get. Sometimes if the paint is wet, you can take a little bit of the coarse salt and sprinkle some salt on it. And that coarse salt is a kind of a heavier grain, and it will dissolve, and that gives you a special effect. I usually bring some salt with me. I happen not to today, but I just reminded myself you can use salt. Sometimes you can take thread, a string or something, and kind of pull it through. Sometimes I use a saran wrap, drop some of that on a wet area, and then let the air collect underneath the saran wrap, and that brings out another texture that you might be able to use. So anyways, this is a little weak here, a little bit weak. So I'm just going to come back in and see if I can do something with some of these areas. Yeah, I can kind of, it just reactivates it a little bit more. But if you let it set up and dry, those brush marks will stay there. They won't absorb into the grain of the paper. I don't know if I fill that in enough on the edges anyways. So looking at this as a whole, might take a little bit of imagination to try to figure out what something might look like. You know, they might look like sort of like a funny face or something, like a dog's head or something with the floppy ears and whatnot. That could be a cow. I see things in it. That could be a profile. There's the eye in there, and the mouth and nose. The neck is in here. You can start seeing things in there and whatnot. That's if you want to deal with a particular subject. But if you want it to be non-objective, you know, just an arrangement of colors and shapes, that's what you have there. So now, let's see what we can do. I try to put this onto a lighter piece of cardboard, and sometimes it takes a little while to get the tape started to remove it. I sort of fold the tape back a little bit so that I can catch the edge a little easier, like this. Just loosen it up a bit. Get those edges pulled back. Usually I would do this after the paint has had more time to dry. Otherwise I might leave some fingerprints in there somewhere. Which is another whole thing that you could do, finger painting. Add some of that texture to it. And I get most of this tape loosened up on the back. There you go. Oops, a little bit over here. Wow, that's really sticking. Yeah. I think I've loosened up enough of the back so I can start pulling off some of the tape. Now this is still wet, so I have to be careful I don't get too many fingerprints onto where I don't want them to be. Let's see. There we go. Now sometimes the paint does get underneath there, but I'll show you how you can kind of make it look it's supposed to be there. Make it look like it should be there, I guess. Get a little bit of a paint up on that edge. Oh, we're pulling off pretty well. My goodness. I got 6 abstract paintings here. Need some square frames. Whoops. Okay. Let's see what we can do. Almost there. Oh, I think we're there. So now you can accept that as a whole pattern of 6 abstract miniatures. You can separate it, break it up. You can have a section of 3. They call it a triptych. And then if there's a series of 2 together, they call it a diptych, so forth. And so you can do all sorts of things with this. You can do all sorts of things with this. So you can still work on it. That's up to you. If you want to make it look like something, you can always add eyes and a nose and a beak if it's a bird or whatever it might be, bunny ears and things if you want to make a bunny rabbit out of it, some of the pictures. But that's how that does work. And that's not that's not bad. Now what's going to happen overnight, the watercolor will absorb more into the paper because before I got started today, I moistened the paper. So what happens in that respect is that it loosens up the grain of the paper so that the water absorbs more into it. So the colors tend to absorb more. And this will be a little bit different in the morning when you look at it. It's going to be, if anything, much lighter in color. But it's a lot of fun to do, and it really is an exercise. You can loosen up doing something like this, and you don't have to worry about if, oops, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have done this or that. Maybe by doing this or that, thinking it might be a mistake, actually it looks better. It'll come out looking pretty good. It's surprising what these abstract things do. And I don't dwell on doing abstract, but sometimes I will work on one or 2 paintings at the same time, doing it this way, similar to this idea, that you could be working on maybe 2 or 3 pictures. Usually I do flowers, but make each one a little bit of a different arrangement and so forth. But that's the way that comes out and works. So now there's a lot of different ideas. You can experiment. I use the plastic that push and pull the paint around. You can use sponges. Usually I buy natural sponge that has a lot of holes in it, a lot of texture to it. And you can stipple and create more texture that way, especially leaves on the tree and whatnot. So there's all different ways, different ways you can use the material. So, and it's things that's not expensive. A roll of tape, this is just regular tape. You don't want to buy tape that's not a good name brand, because sometimes what happens, you're trying to tear the tape off, and what happens, it keeps tearing, and you have to keep catching it and starting the roll up again. So get some halfway decent tape, usually hardware stores. I used to buy, I guess I mentioned this before, I used to buy a lot from Benny's. They had some good quality tape there, and even the paints and things, whatever I needed, I found it there, especially frames. Now, you'll find sometimes people throw away frames, but the problem is that they're odd sizes. That's why they don't want to keep the frame, because they have to have everything cut special, you know, the size of the mat and the size of the glass to fit the thing if you're going to protect it with glass and so whatnot. So it gets a little bit expensive. So I use it myself. I use standard size frames, you know, very common 8x10s and 5x7s, 11s by 14s. Some of the this size here, this size paper, that's a quarter sheet. But I used to buy like a frame that would be like 16 by 20. That's a very common size, and that way you don't have to spend a lot of time cutting to the dimensions of an unusual size. So anyhow, I'm thinking about what we might be able to do next time, and I probably will go back. I still want to do some things down by the seashore, seeing that the weather's warming up and it's getting to be beach weather and whatnot. Maybe something like that. We've got a good area around here for doing things. A lot of brooks and streams and stuff. 10 Mile River. You can go along the 10 Mile River and find some nice little scenes there. Maybe some of the nature trails, possibly. You know, you can find something. So there's plenty in the area to do. To do sunsets is kind of it's a little bit difficult, I should say, to find an open area, sometimes near maybe where the reservoir is off of 95. There's an opening area there, so if you wanted to do a sunset sometime. But that's about it. So I'm getting close to running out of time. I finished up a little sooner than I normally do, but anyways, that's about it. So check the newspaper for some of the activities going on at the local museum, you know, the one on Park Street there. I think they're doing expo again, some form of expo this month too. That's coming up around the 25th of June. So I might be able to get involved with that if I could get all my gear down there and whatnot. So that's about it. And thanks for being with us. And I always say at the end of my show, brushes up and have a good week.